the topic of today's discussion is all three people in this room have read my book. So,
Well, I haven't finished
reading my book. Reading my book.
I'm reading your book, so like I'm just barely getting through. Like I'm getting through all the
Don't kill the
intro
vibe, John. Don't kill the vibe, John.
I don't mean to do that, but I don't want to go too far. So yeah, I finished reading the book. So
no, that's mine, Feral Masculinity, which is I award on the title over it, because masculinity speaks to men, right? And I think this book is about everything but men. I think masculinity gets tied to just to men when it's something that affects us all. So, you know, it's a long way from Christmas. It's a perfect Christmas gift for that person you love, or whatever. But masculinity affects us all, just like femininity affects us all, and we have elements of both within each of us. Whether some of us choose to admit that or not, it's a cultural thing. It was interesting because each of my three books, and Bill and I have had a discussion on this, I was writing as I was going through. I hate the term deconstruction. I despise that word because it's become a buzzword in the industry too. But as I was going through these things, and my next book is probably going to be the nuclear weapon of all of them, because I'm not going to spoil it. I'm gonna wait because it's worth the wait. I'm having a lot more difficult time with it because it's so involved. But John's never been on the Roundtable. Bill has. Like we try to keep it light, try to keep it fun.
Is there initiation?
You're part of the club now. You're part of the club now. We don't do initiations, but you're part of the club now.
I got two Army guys and just me, so I don't know. So is there initiation? So just trying.
No, but we'll send you a T-shirt and a patch so you can testify that you've been in the group. So as part of this, and I don't know how far you are in the book, John, but have you gotten to the part about the tyrant, the monk, and the executive? Okay, well, I'll break you into this chapter because it's an interesting chapter. Because basically what I did is men are one of these three groups, and it's centered around the fact that when I say men, I don't mean every man on the planet, but I mean most men are terrified now because our society has been uprooted. The masculine ideal has changed. What we grew up with thinking was manhood, masculinity, and males doesn't exist anymore because post World War II America, you went out, you got a job after school, you worked at that job for 40 years, you bought a house, you raised a family, blah, blah, blah. And it was kind of a templated life. And then Vietnam came around and the counterculture of Vietnam. And then everything, I'm not blaming it on Vietnam, but things kind of changed. And now, especially we got Bill with the introduction of AI, we're in another period of turmoil where, we as men are no longer the sole provider. And that's because of economics and of various other reasons, but we're no longer the sole provider. We don't buy a house with our income and send two kids to college with our income and buy a car because you can't do that anymore. So the lesson that we learn through popular culture, through our parents, through our fathers, through our grandfathers doesn't work anymore. So men have become unmoored, and where we used to attach our identity as a man to those external things, those validations, that I raised two kids, I bought a home, I had a job, I built a nice retirement. That's not masculinity. That's being a provider. But it's completely divorced from what true masculinity really is. So the book gives you three guys. They don't look anything alike. You never put them in the same environment, but they're all doing the same thing. They're just going about it a lot of different ways. And when I talk about the tyrant, the monk, or the executive, what I mean is the tyrant controls everything, and these are your alpha male guys. These are your guys that have to control every aspect of their existence. They walk into the house and their wives are quiet, their kids are quiet, and they rule the house with an iron fist. And they've learned not to do anything to upset dad. Don't upset the husband because he's had a hard day. He's worked in his job. Then you have the monk, and he thinks he controls himself. He's up every morning, he's running, he's doing the workouts, he's doing everything. But he's trained himself to be past needing anybody else. He's completely reliant upon himself and thinks he's got it all figured out. And then you got the executive, and he just controls everything through schedule, his calendar, and everybody knows this guy. I was this guy at one time. You get up at 4:00, you do your workout. By 5:00, you're in the shower. By 6:00, you're in the car. You're going to work. You got your meetings all day. And I could not exist without having something to do, without having a task in front of me. And if I didn't have a task, it drove me nuts, because I would go, the military is, it's an interesting thing because the military is perfect at this. If you don't have something in front of you, you find something to put in front of you because free time is viewed as no. What's the phrase? The idle hands are devil's workshop. Well, in the military, they absolutely believe that. If you're not doing something from sun up to sundown to the time you put your head on a pillow, you're not being productive. So, everything in his life has been turned into a project because projects have deliverables. They have a deadline. They have an end point. And so you got these three guys, and I did a little game around this. So I'll let you guys pick which one goes first, and I'll give you a scenario, and you tell me which of those three archetypes are fit that narrative, because we'll all recognize people and maybe ourselves in this. And who wants to go first? Well, let Bill go first.
No, I'll let go John. John's new, so we're gonna let.
Okay, all right.
We're gonna let John the novice go.
So yeah, I just talked to Chris yesterday. He says always going first is a good thing sometimes.
Okay.
So, okay. So tell me what I needed. What? So let's go.
All right. So you're having a conversation with a guy, and he's always leaning forwards. He's got his hands on his knees. He's always tense. Feels like he's late for something, even when he's sitting there watching TV with his family. He never breathes deep. He never relaxes, and he perches in chairs like he's always about to stand up. So would that be the tyrant, the monk, or the executive?
Oh. For a moment, I thought it was the monk, but I don't think that is. The tyrant sounds to be more of that type of behavior, but it also could be the executive. I'm going to say executive.
It's executive because everything they do is organized around getting to the next thing, and sitting still would mean he's done, and they don't want to sit still. Everything is structured around keeping life moving. And I said I was that guy. When I woke up, I had to go. If I wasn't doing anything, I wasn't making money. If I wasn't making money, I wasn't being productive. If I wasn't being productive, I wasn't a man. If I wasn't doing that, I was failing myself. So, this one's a little easier. So you should have gone first, Bill.
It's okay, because the first one you gave, you described my exact stance, so I'm giving it away. My hands are on my knees.
You should have just said, "Hey, that's Bill" to a T right there, because he's so this one eats like a robot, same food, same time. He cut out sugar, most of his friends, anything he can't justify as serving the protocol, and he's been alone for the majority of his life and genuinely hasn't noticed.
I'm gonna say monk on this one.
Yeah, I told you it was easier, but that is, you know, because that type of man, they gut everything from their life. They take everything out of their life that could mean something because, they too, you'll notice as you go through them, although they're different personalities, they're all trying to control their life in a different way. And that's the unfortunate thing. And I think the thing I realized writing the book, which led me to my next book, was we talked about this the other day. Almost everything we believe in is a system. And if you walked away from the church, then you likely replaced it with self-help, which is another system, or you replaced it with deep breathing or meditation, which is another system, or you replaced it with something else that is another system, but it wasn't something that was authentic and genuine to you. And we equated it in the conversation. It's like without being overly dramatic, it's like being in the Matrix. Once you see the code, you can't unsee the code, and you realize you're living in behavioral patterns that you didn't design. My blog post was about it. I don't know, you probably didn't read it yet, John, but the one about the numbers. From the time we're born, we're not a name, we're a number, and we've grown to accept this. Within hours of me being born, we're applying for a Social Security number. And that's my credit score, which means much more to the outside world than my name ever will. That social determines that those numbers determine where I live, how I live, where I get a job. It's insane. So, but back to the game. So this one's again, the odd ones are difficult. So John, you're screwed the entire way through this unless we change up. So, this this guy is patient and polite to every single person in his life, his wife, his kids, his boss, his friends.
Monk.
You're jumping ahead. And you're wrong.
And you're wrong.
Oh, am I wrong?
But he absolutely loses his mind. But he absolutely loses his mind on a waiter when they screw up his order, or the person ahead of him counting coins at a register, or somebody going slow in traffic.
Yeah, that's the tyrant.
That's the tyrant. So, because they always look like they can control themselves, but right. Those are the guys that lose it, and they end up in prison because they lost it at a convenience store. They got out of hand in traffic, and sometimes we're these guys at various times of our lives, or various times during the day, and
yeah.
All right, Bill. So this guy runs until his knees fail. His shoulders and his neck are knotted all the time. He doesn't think his body is telling him something. He thinks his body is just being difficult.
I'm going to say executive.
That's the monk.
Okay.
Because the monk, his body is an enemy. These are what I would call in loose terminology your workout bros. Because they're a form. That's a form of monk, and that's a form of self worship. The pain isn't a message; it's a mutiny against them, and they treat it like that. Your body's not speaking to you; it's arguing with you, and it's something to be conquered, not something to be dealt with. Which is why, a lot of us end up, especially again, not to go back to the military, but we end up late in life with, I know at some point I'm facing a knee replacement. But I get up every morning mad at my knee, not at the military, because I think my knee's betraying me. And, it's another one, we just keep overriding those signals until something actually gives. And by then it's too late. All right. 5, so it's John again. Okay, this guy has sex like it's a task. You can probably get it right there.
Well, executive.
Absolutely. He schedules a window for it. He shows up. It happens. She seems fine. He seems fine. They take a shower, and then they go to bed. And again, they're turning intimacy into a scheduled deliverable. And that was the point in me going into this book is so we as men can look at ourselves and say, I do these things, because our wives or our significant others or they don't want to be on your iPhone saying, the kids will be at sleep, so from 10 to 10:30 we're going to be intimate. That's not intimacy. That's anything but it sounds ludicrous when I say it like that, but this is the thought process that a lot of men are having. They're thinking, I got to get home, I got to go jog, I got to eat dinner, I got to do, my quarterly report, and then I'll have a couple of long hours with my wife, and the kids will be asleep, and I'll do my husband duties then. And when you really start looking at it, like I said, when I wrote it down in the book and I had to read this stuff, I'm like, man, this sounds stupid, because it is stupid. And we wonder why our marriages are falling apart. We wonder why we can't have connection with other human beings. Is because we're treating those people as tasks on a list. You'll find this interesting, John. I'm going to have a segue here because we had this conversation on our men's group, and I'm going to bring this up. You have kids, John?
Yes,
they're older now, right?
Yes, they are.
We spend 90,000 hours on average at work during our lifetime. 90,000 hours. From the time your child is born to the time they're gone from your house, as a man in this economy, in this culture, how many of those hours do you think you gave your children?
On an average or total?
On an average.
Like per day? I'm sorry.
No, a lifetime. From the time they were born to the time they were out of your house.
I'd say about 20,000.
The average time for a man in America right now that they give their children from 0 to 18 is 1,700 hours.
1,700, not
1,700, not 17,000. 1,700.
Wow, I was off a lot.
And we were breaking down these numbers, and I've got older daughters now, and when I came upon these numbers, that hurts. I spent so much of my adult life working and gave 1,700 of those very precious. I gave 90,000 hours to everyone else in this world and 1,700 to my kids. And that's unfair no matter which way we cut it. So it speaks to where we are as a culture and where we are as men. What was the other one, Bill? How much was it with the significant other? I'll tell you this: you spend the way Brady said, if you work in an urban environment or have a commute, you spend more time in your life at traffic lights than you do with your wife or significant other. You spend more time sitting at a traffic light than you spend in intimate conversation with the person that you married.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, is just, it blew my mind, because when we look at it, these are numbers we can understand. It speaks to how screwed up of a system we've built and why we are the way we are now, especially as men, because you're always at war with yourself in a way, because I want nothing else than to spend time with my child. Now I've got a new one. I got another one that may be here tonight He better hurry up. So he's driving me crazy. He won't come. But it's unfair to my older daughters, but my now youngest daughter, I spend every waking moment that I can with her. Because I learned, and I have that opportunity, which a lot of men don't have. But back to the game. All right, Bill, this guy hasn't yelled in years, and he doesn't need to. When he comes home, everything's cool. His wife's got dinner ready. The kids check on dad, and everybody just goes about their business.
So this could be tyrant because everyone's afraid of him. Yeah, I'm gonna say tyrant.
Okay, you got it.
Yeah. When I thought it's either tyrant or executive, but then I thought, you know what? With the way you described it, there's so many people walking on eggshells.
That's good. All right, John. So this one's easier. This guy retires, and he's dead 6 months later.
Oh God.
The executor.
Yeah, the executive. Because that was their life. That was their life. That was everything they were. Their life was mission. And once the mission's complete, they don't have reason anymore. So, all right, Bill. This guy's wife has basically stopped trying to even have a relationship with him. It's on life support, and he responds by just working harder. He sleeps less. He changes his diet. He gets in better shape. And if you told him his marriage was dying, he would look confused.
Monk?
Yeah.
Yeah. I had to say that with a little bit of question, but no, yeah, because
I realize now this is unfair because you've read the entire book and and you're cheating. This is what it is. We're gonna claim Bill's cheating on this one.
Yeah, I mean,
I want a verification.
there you go.
All right, last one, and this is for both of you. This man is there for everything. He's at dinner. He's at every school function. He's at every birthday. He doesn't miss anything. He provides everything. His wife would tell you he's a good dad. His kids are going to spend years in therapy, though, trying to explain why the man who never missed a single event somehow was never there for any of them.
I'm going to say the executor.
Same executive.
It's all three.
Oh, it's all three. Oh.
And that's the crux of that chapter in the book is no matter which thing you take, you end up in the same destination. No matter which way you try to manage this, you end up in the same hell. Is that you weren't there for your wife, you weren't there for your kids, you weren't there for your family. You pretended you were because we tied that providing, the provisional part, the relationship, the transactional part of life to being there, which is, again, something that we tie to masculinity because masculinity in our eyes is non-emotional. It's transactional. And no matter which one of those paths you take or any other path that, I might have created, we end up in the same path. We end up not the same path, the same place. So you had to read this chapter about, boys learning lessons or close there, because that was closer to the front.
Yeah.
Every day as a child, especially as a young boy, we're learning something, and it's what lessons we're learning. And as I get older as a parent, I realize what lessons I'm teaching my child that I didn't teach mine. And it's not my fault because I didn't know any better. But we have to be careful what we say to other people. And it's not just boys, it's the people around us. But, we'll reverse it and go first with Bill. So he gets the odd ones this time. So,
Sure.
You got a boy that's 6 years old, is crying. His dad doesn't turn around and his mom stops washing dishes. And the kid feels it. He knows that his crying is upsetting everybody. What did he learn?
He learned that his needs are not met.
That and they learn that our sadness, cost other people something,
Mhm.
and we stop allowing that because that being sad, if it triggers our mother or doesn't trigger our mother, it triggers our father, doesn't trigger our father, that it cost him something, and that every time we cried or every time he cried, it changed his parents' behavior, didn't change his parents' behavior, whichever the case may be. And he viewed that in a way, again, it's a transactional thing, right? I cried, it changed you and my relationship with you. So therefore I'm not going to cry anymore, because now crying is immediately associated um, with a cost
Mhm.
that he doesn't want to pay, because he doesn't want his dad upset. He doesn't want his dad not proud of him. How many times did our fathers say to us, "Big boys don't cry," you know? And it wasn't meant to hurt, but there was a message there that big boys, that we carried into adulthood. Big boys don't cry, and we learn not crying. And it in this other book I talk about, one of the most horrendous things in the military was getting off a helicopter from a mission and shaking so hard because you understand it, but you're out there and there's crap flying everywhere, and you don't have time in the missions to focus on what's going on. But on the ride back, you're like, you can dissect what happened and what you did and what they did. And you get back, and I would get back, and I would be shaking so hard that I could barely walk. And I would walk away from the helicopter, and I would go sit on the edge of the airfield and wait till I calmed down before I walked back into the hangar. And some of the other guys would too. They'd go do their own thing because you didn't want everybody else to see you, because you were scared that everybody else would see that as falling apart.
Mhm.
Or being damaged in it. And the reality of it is we were all shaken up. We just wouldn't admit it to each other.
Mhm.
And that's the tragedy of the whole thing, is we were all having the same pain, but we were all being big boys and not crying about it. And that's the lesson we learned. So, all right, John. So a teacher asked who needs help with their shoes, and 3 kids raise their hands. He doesn't. He he ties them in a big knot under his desk. But by winter, he's learned to time himself, and he can do it in the dark. What did he learn?
Independence.
Um,
Or did I misunderstand that?
no, you did. I mean, again, it's something that we internalize, and even in a situation like that young in school, you're looking around and you're already judging, you're already grading everybody else. And kids that raise their hand, even if it's micro expressions or the way the teacher talks to them, that needing help is something a lot of us can't do. We can't call somebody
Oh, you're saying.
and say, I need help with this. You don't raise your hand. You just go figure it out yourself.
Mm.
And, it's a very simplistic one, but, we consider that confidence and competence, but it's not. We punished ourselves and went and learned to tie our own shoes, and do it so well that we didn't need any other person. And for some reason, we consider in some idiotic way, we consider the fact that if we don't need somebody else in our life, we're stronger for it. And that's a ridiculous notion on its face. So, um, that's a simple one. All right, Bill. A boy comes home and his mom is exhausted. He can see it. She asks if he's hungry, but he says no, even though he's starving. And she says, and we've all heard this, "You're such a good kid."
Hmm.
What did he learn?
Well, I think he learned to lie for the comfort of somebody else.
That's one. But what's the deeper thing there? This is a good one.
I think he put the comfort of his mother first.
He did. And a
Yeah.
lot of us do that, but more importantly, he learned that there's a trade available there.
Hmm.
He learns that he buries his own need, he gets something in return.
Yeah.
And again, we're at a transactional relationship. He got a word, a label, good kid, right? Good kid is what we all want to be. So this kid learned right there, if he puts his own pain and his own hunger aside, he gets treated like something that's love.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be genuine love from his mother. It probably is genuine love when she's saying you're a good kid. But his mom in that moment is relieved that he didn't ask for anything. And to the kid, relief and love look exactly the same. And that we carry that into adulthood,
Is that also a portion of like he's not learning to be responsible?
No, I don't think it's as much responsibility. Well, I think there's a facet of responsibility with that. You could tie it into responsibility, but it's more that in that case where we're learning that transaction, and that we're willing to just trade our discomfort for the love and admiration of another person. So later in life, when you come home and you honestly, all these tying together, like I said, you need help with something. You need something from your wife, or you need something from your children, or you need something from your significant other, and you're unwilling to say it because if you sit in front of them saying, what's the worst two words human beings utter daily? I'm fine. Sit in front of her wife and she knows something's wrong with you, or your mother or your father or somebody else. You sit in front of them and they say, "How are you?" And you say, "I'm fine." And they're like, well, good, I'm proud of you. Well, you're doing the exact same thing that you did as that 6-year-old boy. You're trading that word, that comfort that you provided them for that what feels good to you for that moment. So, um, it again, the longer you sit with it, and the longer you think about it, you start seeing little examples. You know, but, and I'm sure a psychologist or a psychiatrist could get deeper into it than I could, but it is transactional. And when I started going through these, I started recognizing the little behaviors that I have and the little ways that I, without thinking, conducted these transactions throughout the day with the people in my life, and how much I did it to my children. Like I genuinely mean that I'm proud of you, and I genuinely mean that I'm happy for you. But we have to look at how they're translating that what we're saying, so they don't bring it into themselves and turn it into something it's not. I don't want my daughter thinking I'm proud of her because she didn't cry. I don't want my daughter thinking I'm proud of her because she went to bed hungry. I you know it I don't want it to be transactional. And it's a lot of work. So we're even now. Um,
A score?
huh?
Was there a score?
We're not a score. No,
You didn't
we're
know
all,
there's a competition.
we're
I would have
even
scored
numbers. We're
more
even
in
numbers, not
the
even
book.
score.
I would have the book. I would have won the book fight.
Yeah.
If I knew this was going to be a score.
If you lose, you got to send me my book back. How's that? No, I'm not keeping score. All right. Dodgeball. A boy catches one right in the face, and his eyes water. He turns away, waits for it to stop, and then comes back, and everybody's already continued playing the game. And this is a lot like the scenario I just described. So what did he learn?
Life goes on.
It does go on, and there's a timer on when you can be injured. There's a timer on when you can admit that you're being hurt. There's a specific. We do this in grief. We do this in pain. We do it in breakups. We do it in divorce. We do it in everything. The minute you get hurt, there's a timer that starts in everybody else's head, because we all do this. That you are allowed this long to be injured. You are allowed this long to be hurt. And we discuss this in a lot of our other meetings. If you lose a significant other, or you lose a parent, or you lose something, the world immediately starts trying to push you into that healing phase and say, you've been grieving long enough. You don't get to say how long I get to grieve. The truth is, I'm going to grieve for the rest of my life.
But somehow their life has to move on. I mean,
life
I'm
moves
not,
on.
I'm not saying, I'm not dismissing the pain, but at some point, you got to say, okay, this is happening. I got to still deal with this, but I still have to live. I mean, that's a
You have
double-edged
to live.
sword. Yeah.
It is a double-edged sword in a way, but you have the latitude to grant yourself recovery. You have the latitude to grant yourself a little bit of healing. And again, dodgeball is a simple metaphor, because it's going to hurt for a few minutes, and then you go back to the game. But a kid, translates that, I got to get right back in the game, or as ball coach slapping him on the rump and saying, get back out there. Maybe he is hurt. And maybe he needs to sit there and cry for 2 or 3 minutes. And then he can go back to the game. Life does move on, and life needs to continue. But you are allowed that period to hurt.
Right.
And do whatever you need to. And it needs to be granted that. So
I could tell you this from an athlete. You got hurt and you sat, someone takes your spot.
Absolutely. And it's the same way in the working world. You get hurt, you go out, a woman gets pregnant, goes on maternity leave, you step out of the game, and somebody is there willing to take your spot. So that timer starts immediately, not just for the rest of the world, it starts for you, because you're at home, say like you said, say you're playing baseball and you tear up your knee, and you got to have knee surgery. I mean, we see this all the time in sports on TV. A guy blows out his ACL, or he tears up his arm, and the minute he starts, you're like, you got 6 months to recover, or we're going to put you on waivers. And then his whole, and that's a different version of this. What I'm talking mainly is what we're teaching our children.
Yeah.
And what we learned as children, because we should be mature enough to sit out there and say, you know what, my knee is screwed up, and I don't need to pay a stupid price now for not being able to walk when I'm 60. I don't need to pay the dumb price now to stay in the game. I did plenty of stupid stuff in my day. There were plenty of times I shouldn't have been out in the field that I was out in the field. And, we're legendary for it. And the things they don't tell you about what we did in the military and the things we really did when we were in the military are two different things. They don't want you to take drugs, right? But they give you amphetamines to stay awake for missions. And, I bet you a lot of the population didn't know that. There were times you were up in the air 16, 17, 18 hours, and you're wide open, and you ain't wide open because you're drinking coffee, and you pay a price for it later on. Anyway, so odd. So, John, your buddy tells you something really serious, something really real, and something that scares you, something that scares him. And you listen, you nod, you don't say much. And afterwards, the friend says, "Thanks for not making it weird." What was learned there?
Well, there's so much, but trust is one. Allowing to be open
Mhm.
without judgment, because men usually are judged right off the bat.
Mhm. And we're very judgmental too.
We're very judgmental, and it's also weakness, a sign of weakness. There's a lot of the vulnerability is the weakness, really. And he was able to talk.
There was another piece I wrote a while back about men and how men connect, and men connect. Even fathers and sons connect facing forward.
Mhm.
Riding in a car, hunting, sitting side by side in a boat. When women talk to each other, they face each other.
Oh, yeah.
They sit there and they sit across from each other, and they look at each other's face, and they talk, and they have the emotions. When men are bonding, we're sitting side by side when we're not looking at each other. And what we learn in there is that connection is a lot of times it's one way, and you receive, but you don't say anything back. You don't say same here. You don't offer your own thing back. You don't stay. You just get thanked for being somebody that's being spoken to, not somebody that's in a conversation, because you really weren't in the conversation. You sat there and received the message, but you really offered nothing back, and that's not a conversation, and that's not connection. And a lot of times those guys, they become the guy everybody trusts, but nobody actually knows anything about, because he never shares anything to anybody else. He's the guy that everybody talks to. And when I thought about that, when I wrote that piece about that, it's very true. And I go back to my childhood with my dad, and my dad was a great father. I'm not saying he wasn't, but very few of our conversations were facing each other. They were sitting on a couch watching TV. We're always focused somewhere else, because we have such a hard time dealing with our emotions as men and getting emotional in front of another man and sharing that part of ourselves. There's a level of intimacy that we're allowed to have, but once you cross that threshold, you're in dangerous territory as a man, especially if you're not related. And it's another one that you could talk about for hours. But all right, Bill. Piano teacher tells his mom the boy could be really good if he practiced more. Mom looks at him and says, "I don't really like it that," and he says, "I don't really like it that much." But he's lying. He really loves piano. But loving it and failing at it is a worse outcome than just pretending he doesn't care. What is he learning?
I'm remembering as you go through these why the book was so powerful to read, because so many of these are so truisms in our life. And so I go back to like the thing that I experienced. The thing I learned, or the thing he learns, is one, to not say the things he loves out loud, that he's afraid don't align with maybe what a parent wants. And there was something in there about failure too. I think you said, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's easier to fail at something and say you don't care than it is to admit you really care about something and want to put a lot into it that others might not value.
It's yeah. Wanting something to men is dangerous, because if you say you want it and you don't get it, you have failed, and you have failed publicly. Because once you have uttered it aloud and said it to anybody, and you failed at it, you've come up short. And men have a hard time admitting that they failed at anything. And again, I'm not saying every man. So if somebody's watching this, or you're thinking I'm talking about you, I'm not talking about every man. I'm saying this is a masculine trait that we have a hard time. And at periods in my life, I've had this same thing we have a hard time walking in the house sometimes and saying to our significant other, to our wife, we did it when we were kids. We had a hard time saying to my mom, saying, I need help.
Hmm.
And that's the worst thing for men is to utter those words. I need help. I am failing. I cannot do this by myself. Or if you get into an arena of, let's go outside that and say, even desire to walk up to our wife and say, not I love you, or not slap her on the butt, or not tease her, is to walk up to her and face her and say, I desire you. And I don't think my life would be complete without you. And I need you. Because once you utter those words, you've uncovered the fact that if that person leaves you, it's going to hurt you. It was always going to hurt you, but for some reason for us, admitting it to the world makes it 10 times worse. And we would never say that to our friends, or most men would never say it to their friends. They'll sit around and they'll make wife jokes and they'll make woman jokes and they'll make all these jokes, and they wouldn't sit there and say, I need my wife. I love my wife. My wife completes me. Or, it's, and I'm using the wife analogy. We learn to kill desire before it's visible. And I'm not talking about just sexual desire or physical desire. I'm talking about desire for things. We learn to kill it. All right, John. He's 8 years old and he stops asking to leave places. He stays at loud birthday parties that get him headaches. He stays at family dinners that go way too long. He just finds a corner and makes himself comfortable. Meanwhile, he watches his cousins cry and go home, and he sees how his aunt reacts differently. What did he learn there? He can learn two things depending on how his aunt reacted.
Well, one, that he became submissive to whatever the situation is. He also saw, he saw his cousins not really being heard and not matter. They're just being used as pawns, per se. I don't mean that to be literal, but like, for example, we're going, you drag them out, kind of thing.
He's learning a little bit of the same thing that we did previously. He's learned that honesty has a cost. And there's a price to be paid for being honest. And it could be either, if his aunt took it well, he learned that, great. But if he asked his mom and his mom said, no, you need to stay, and, or his aunt reacted badly, he learns that there's a cost for that. And he's learning to watch his behavior in front of everybody else. And in certain circumstances, again, that's fine. They should. But as a 6-year-old, you carry that into adulthood, and you remember that, and I'll say this, this one is an excellent example of women. This is where this is not just about men; it's about women. And it's one of the things I discuss quite often is we have problems saying we're uncomfortable in this situation. I think women are better at it, but we have the right to say we're uncomfortable in this situation. A woman has a right to say she's uncomfortable around a certain man, or uncomfortable in a certain room, or uncomfortable around a certain group of people. And we as men have the right to say, and boys say, I'm not comfortable in a loud environment. I'm not comfortable being here. And again, it's that transaction. I'll pretend like it doesn't bother me, but we're lying to ourselves, and we think that doesn't have a cost, but it does have a cost. And
right.
We're not going to get into that because it would take another 10 hours to discuss all the things, the ways these things could come back up. But all right, Bill, your dad asked you to help build a shed. You barely talk. That start handing your dad tools. before he's asked for them. You're anticipating what he needs. And your dad says, you're getting really good at this. What did he learn?
Well, I think one goes back to the value piece of it. So like his value is now kind of linked with kind of a job or a task or a performance. And he feels kind of those words of affirmation, and he gets probably a little addicted to it.
It's that. And again, I'm being really simplistic for the sake of these arguments, but it's about being useful in a situation, and how you like that feeling because your dad has rewarded you for being useful, not for being anything but useful at that period. And you carry that in, and you'll chase that because that's approval. And then you'll chase it through your teachers, you'll chase it through your relationships, you'll chase it through how other people make you feel. And when somebody says something in a positive manner like that, it's a feeling that you'll chase for the rest of your life. So, all right, John, last one. A boy gets falsely accused of cheating on a test, and he has to sit on the bench for 4 days while they investigate. The coaches, teachers, and principal, parents, they're all watching how he handles it. He doesn't say a word. He doesn't argue. He doesn't complain. Finally, he's cleared, and the coach makes him team captain. The principal puts him on a leadership committee, and everyone tells him how impressive it was and how well he composed himself. What did he learn?
Oh. Bill knows.
I'll give you both a shot because it's the last one.
Well, there's so many lessons there. I'm just trying to think.
There are, but there's one very primary lesson, or very primary. There's one primary lesson.
Well, if you go back to,
I give you a hint. How did this kid feel being accused of cheating when he wasn't?
Oh, feel like crap, probably.
What was he rewarded for?
His composure.
Exactly.
Quiet.
He wasn't rewarded for being innocent. He was rewarded for feeling something and showing nothing.
Yeah.
So in other words, all those accolades were just handed to him because everybody else felt sorry for him.
No, not really. Again, it's interpretation of how we look at things.
Well, what I'm saying is like he didn't earn to be a captain on the team. He didn't really earn to be a leader in the scholar part of it. He was just given these things because of his discipline of not saying anything until this thing was over, which was the right thing to do, obviously.
They promoted him for being quiet.
Yeah, for composure. Yeah.
And how many times does that happen in our adult lives in the working world where you don't make a stink and your boss is like, hey, you're really easy to deal with. I'm going to give you a promotion, or, you didn't upset the apple cart. So we're going to put you on the team. Again, I know these are simplistic, but in this instance, the kid, swallowed an injustice.
Mm-hmm.
He was accused of doing something he didn't do. He sat there quietly, and his reward was being promoted. So he learned that if I don't show anything and I don't feel anything, I get rewarded for it.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're very, I understand they're very simplistic, and you got to read the book to really get the.
I got a major disadvantage, Bill.
Sorry.
I'm not a happy camper.
Don't stay composed. Speak out. Rebel.
I had to march on the street. 1776, all over again. But just kidding. I'm kidding.
No, I wasn't digging at y'all. I'm trying to get a pitch in. I never get my own pitch in during these things. I always somehow sign out without pitching my own books. That's one of my worst habits is I will go through an hour of pitching everybody else's stuff, and then I sign off and say, I didn't tell anybody I did anything. You know, I started this whole thing about my book, and I never even gave anybody the title of my book.
No, this is actually really, actually, this whole, it had me, I had to go through the book a couple of times and see if I could find those passages because I was trying to understand where you're at.
These aren't exact passages from the book because I don't want to.
Oh, okay.
I was simplifying things, so I'm not going to give you a test you can cheat on here, John. I got a little bit of brains about me here, so
yeah, I learned differently when I was a child. I learned how to cut corners.
Yeah, so but no, I'll sign this off. Not talking about my book that everybody should go immediately buy. I do want to give you a shout out again, John, because John is one of those guys that's on Substack and in the world of self-published authors and out there singing the praises of people and getting names out there. And as a follow-up to our conversation last time because we talked a lot about Substack last time, I think it is, I don't want to say duty, I think it behooves all of us, the small self-published people, to promote each other in every way and form we can. And like I said earlier, that's taking things off the stack and putting it on Instagram. If you find a quote that means something to you, put it on LinkedIn, put it somewhere where people get the word out and share it, and sing each other's praises, and it'll come back to all of us. I think it's wonderful what you're doing. I'm honored and thrilled to be a part of what you did, and that you recognize me and some of my work. I still feel like a 10-year-old kid when somebody contacts me or says something about, hey, I read this, and I'm like, you read my book? What?
Another feeling.
Yeah.
Feeling is like, what? You did what?
Yeah.
Wow,
that's
really
crazy. Yeah, where did you find that?
Yeah.
So, it's we all need to do that, and I think we need to coordinate ourselves. I'd like to work with you, and I know Bill would too. And promote these things, and like I said, I got some books and dropped a couple in the little library and watched them disappear, and I should go a little bit further with that, but it is imperative that because it has become quite apparent that the big publishers and the big organizations are not going to.
Mm-hmm.
They'll want you once you have 20,000, 30,000 copies of your book sold. But my take on that is if I get to that point, I don't need you anymore, and I'll take it from here. So, for everybody watching, go read, share a quote, because most of those people will go back and return the favor. I've found that most of the people that I went out for and shared their work, they came right back to me and shared mine. And, it doesn't matter how you get there, as long as you get there. It's attention. And as, what is it, P.T. Barnum said, there's no such bad thing as bad publicity.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, if I may.
Yeah.
So you're touching something that I think Substack could turn us into. Like we were taught, in our podcast yesterday, we were talking about how Substack really is a writer's publication platform. Your page is really your entries of your articles, and I treat mine like a newspaper. you know. But when I was on here and I was publishing my books, I was like a one person out of millions of people publish a book. What do you do? I mean, the hard part is publishing a book. Once you get there, technically that's the easy part. Writing it, putting it together, and publishing it on a self-publish on Amazon or whatever platform you put on. That's the easy part. The hard part is hawking it, actually going out and selling it and getting people interested in reading it and so forth. And I think that is the challenge that we all face. Um, so when I started to do this, I had a website I was developing on Spotify. And one of the things I want to do is create a depository, a library of all Substack writers who publish their books and kind of, ooh, does that happen on your end too?
No, what happened?
Lightning.
Oh, it was lightning?
Oh, wow, that was cool. Did you see the lightning? You see the little spark on the TV or on the screen? That was awesome. Sorry, little things you fascinate you. Hopefully we can get out of this.
Yeah, well, we've had them here. We got another one coming in, but there's a great likelihood, because as somebody pointed out, this is the book. I hope it's in frame.
Mm-hmm.
Substack's video sucks. And the last 4 lives I did, I realized half my face was in the frame, and I was talking to everybody like this because it shows me centered on here.
Yeah.
But when they publish it, I'm looking at my left eyeball the entire time, and half my mouth. Yeah. We do need to coordinate more on that, John, and
wow.
Just keep pushing, because the words are out there, and what you're saying as a writer, somebody else needs to hear.
Yeah. Well, the goal here is with my website, creating a depository, if people can hear those, is to really get, and I'm going to share the screen. So quickly here. So we don't, so if you go onto here on my Substack, you can go into a website, and it takes you to here. And the cool thing about this, it shows so I asked everybody to kind of create give me their titles and all that, going. And now I'm listing it on here on my Substack or my website, which gets pushed out everywhere else. And so the cool thing about this is now it's kind of being, that's on my Substack. And then there's this one. Sorry, guys, I can't. Then this is on my website, just quickly. This is where the depository will come. And this is all the people on Substack writing. And this is the first entry of all the book. This will become a big, huge library. And the intention is that people can come here, look for a book of their favorite writers. And then eventually I do write a little bit about them. What I plan on doing is either buying their book or do a proper write-up and then do a post. One of the things that people don't really understand is that if they go onto Amazon, which I'll show you quickly here.
We can't see your screen, by the way.
Oh, you can't?
No.
Oh, all right. Well, then you guys could. So I apologize. But if you go on Amazon, that's where the power is in supporting these writers. Buying the book, do the audio, do the ebook, all that. It's great.
Oh, she said they said they can. I can't see it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So they can't see your screen. So go ahead.
Okay.
Another thing I didn't know could happen on this thing. How can you be a host and not see anything on this screen? I don't understand that. I can't see my face. I can't see my book. I can't see your screen. I can't see anything. But I'm the host of this thing. This is the most absurd thing.
So if you go on Amazon to any of these creators, you could go actually to the very bottom and you can see where it says customer reviews. You see this? This is where published authors get really, really hurt in this section right here. They got nothing. So I will go in and put a review, give them a 5-star every time. If we had 100 people doing to all those publications of that book, say 100 of our people went and did that to every single book. Imagine the impact of that author. It just bumps them up. It puts them in a category, in a different category. And then there is a rating in here that you see. It's like right now you don't see any ratings. Oh, here's the rating. Bestseller at almost a 2 million. When I did Rediscover Vancouver, it was top 10 in Canada. Top 10 in Canada because my ratings were up. So what I'm saying is, if we really want to take advantage of Substack, your readers, your authors, your writers, all your fellow writers, writing a 10 seconds comments goes a long way for every single one of us. So I urge you to go on my website, click on them, give them ratings, read their books, buy their books, do whatever you can, because the power is if they see you do that, they're more likely to stay as writers on Substack.
Absolutely. And that's the goal, is to keep the voices out there and grow not just mine, everybody's, because I like reading everybody, but
right.
Go ahead.
I will just say, I've read all 3 of Joe's recent published books, and I read them in like a series, and each time it unpacked more and more for me in a good way. And I actually went on and ordered like 12 copies of Feral Masculinity, and I sent it to 12 different men that I know over the course of my life, right? Many of them are fathers, many of them are executives, some of them are the like people we described. And they've reached out and said, I never would have found this book, but for the fact that you dropped it in the mail and said, this is an important book to read. And it's changing the conversations that they're having with people they love. And so again, for what it's worth, read those, share those. Last thing I'll say is, just this past week, I put a book of my favorite Irish poet in the mail to Joe.
Oh, cool.
Because I felt it was important for Joe to know the books that were important to me, right? Because now his books, there you go, In the Shelter, thank you, yeah, by Padre Gotoma. And Joe's books were so helpful to me at this time in my life that I felt like it was important for me to share a book that was equally important with him at a time in his life. This sort of pay it forward keeps going, especially with writers. So find a way to do that. I love, Joe, that you say you go to a little library, you drop it in. You're right. Maybe put a note in the book.
Yeah.
And say, I love this.
I should have done that, is go out there. But I'll let everybody get back to their evening. I know I appreciate you guys jumping on.
Well, thank you, Joe.
The next roundtable, we'll have a new addition to the tribe here. I got to throw that out there because I'm getting more excited about it by the day.
Good.
There's my son Finn will be here.
Okay. Yay.
Named after Huckleberry Finn, which is one of my favorite characters growing up. So my first boy. So very excited about that. Probably be another book over that one, because
for sure
I've been surrounded by women for the greater majority of my life, so it's going to be a new experience having a little boy. So I appreciate you guys coming on, and
all right,
thanks.
Let me know how I can help John, if I can be of any assistance. And I got some ideas I'm going to send you. And thanks everybody for tuning in, and had fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Appreciate it.
All right. You got to
Bye.
have a great one. All right.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.